it's unfortunate that Simon made the intervention, and I think we should fully get behind Rishi Sunak.
Do you agree or disagree with Simon?
I don't agree with Simon. I think it's the wrong time to change leader. I think we've had lots of leaders. Neither of the Prime Minister or his predecessor was elected in 2019, and I think to change the leadership now without a general election, I think would be very unwise.
Does that mean that the Prime Minister has your full confidence for going into the next election?
Well, look, we've got a leader. We've got an election this year. The only way that we're going to avoid a total disaster is by staying united and backing the leader. In a team focused way. I think people going off on their own, calling for Rishi Sunak to resign, is not very helpful.
That wasn't exactly a resounding vote of confidence for the Prime Minister. We have a leader. Well,
look,
of course,
I think he's doing.
Yeah,
we've got. No, I mean, look, I'm trying to be. I know
diplomatic.
The custom is always to try and sow divisions. It's unfortunate that Simon made the intervention, and I think we should fully get behind Rishi Sunak.
And are you fully behind Rishi Sunak?
Yes, I am fully behind him. I'm not. I don't know why. On what premise you got me onto this program? I mean, maybe you thought I would back Simon. I'm not. I'm backing Rishi Sunak. He's the Prime Minister. He's the leader. I've always backed whoever was the leader, whether it was Boris or Johnson or David Cameron or Liz Truss. I was always 100% loyal to them, and I'm 100% loyal to Rishi Sunak.
No premise, just happy to have your opinion. So do you think that Simon is just stirring things up and perhaps making his own leadership bid?
I think you'll have to ask Simon. I mean, it was an odd intervention. The thing that's struck me is that I think every single person, and there have been lots of people, have really jumped on him and said, what are you doing? Get behind the leader. You're not speaking for the vast majority of people in the party. He's very much a lone voice on this. And I think that, it was an unhelpful intervention on his part.
Can we move on to the OBR, which is one of the reasons that we wanted you on the programme today, because Richard Hughes, the OBR chair, has said that the government has not even bothered to write down its spending plans beyond 2025, calling it worse than a work of fiction. I know that Liz Truss, who you obviously worked with during her brief premiership, viewed the OBR as a sort of outdated, perhaps, establishment organisation. But reflecting back, I wonder if taking the OBR seems to you, which is the government's watchdog, seems to you quite important.
Well, I think we saw, certainly in my experience with Liz, it probably wasn't a good idea simply to ignore the OBR. The OBR is a fact of life, however much you like it or not. And I think that, for the government to come up with its plans for spending in 2025, when we've got an election in 2024, is unrealistic because it's if you believe the polls, the Conservative Party has got a real job to try and win that election. So, in a way, spelling out what your spending plans are before a general election, I think is an exercise that's probably not very valuable.
Indeed, but I suppose that the OBR is there to scrutinise, fiscal plans, and if there aren't any, then they're made slightly obsolete, no?
So, I mean, technically, I think there are plans. They're not spelled out. So the idea is that you're going to grow spending, I think, 1% a year after 2025. So that's the broad envelope, but that I think has been spelled out. What the OBR are protesting about is the fact that there aren't any more specific lines of spending in the forecast, and I think that's understandable given the fact that we are in the last year before a general election, about which there's great uncertainty. There's no real belief that it's not as if it's clear that the government is going to get re-elected. They could do. I think I'm more of an optimist on that. But I think it would be premature for the government to try and spell out line by line spending ahead of the general election. They've set out the broad envelope, that's customary, but they haven't committed to any specific spending ahead of the general election.
You yourself have been a big champion of tax cuts, and what seems
Yeah.
fairly certain at the moment is that there will be tax cuts in the March budget. Taxes, of course, are at their highest since the Second World War, but polling, recent polling in the last week or so, shows that 62% of people want spending on public services rather than tax cuts. Only 22% want tax cuts. So do you think that it is actually the wrong focus at the moment?
No, I think that um, the aim of the game is to try and grow the economy. Um, I know winning elections is obviously hugely important, but ultimately, people who are responsible for the government should be trying to drive national prosperity. And I think it's a very cool conservative belief. In fact, I don't think I've ever met a conservative who doesn't think that actually, in the long run, lowering the tax burden incentivizes economic activity and can drive economic growth. Now, how you get there, there's a huge debate about that. There's a huge range of discussion about how, what the means are to get there. But broadly, I think people, certainly conservatives, believe that lowering taxes actually can drive growth. And I can see why Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak are now saying that this is something that they're going to be looking at.
Just finally, I mean, do you think that your time as Chancellor, brief as it was, damaged your credibility in terms of economic forecasting, or has actually been
Well,
proved to have been correct?
forecasters. No, I mean forecasting, as you know, is a very perilous exercise, and very few people actually are very good at forecasts. In fact, the OBR's own forecasts have been contradicted again and again. So I don't think that I have any. I've never claimed to be a forecaster. What I am concerned about is obviously taxation levels. I think you're not going to get prosperity if you have taxes at a 70-year high, and I'm still pretty convinced that over time we're going to have lower tax levels in order to incentivize economic growth.
So you still think your budget was the right way to go, but perhaps
No, I
at the
didn't
wrong
say that.
time?
I didn't say that. I mean, again, you're twisting what I'm saying.
I'm
I
asking.
said that the objective is for lower taxes is the right one. Now, how you get about that, how you approach that, how you execute that, that's we can discuss that. There are a range of things one can do.
Thank you very much for joining me, Kwasi Kwarteng. Thanks again for
Thank you.
joining me on Times Radio.